for that is the walk-ins. And when you walk in, you vote in person, but you've checked in first on an electronic poll book in most places. And those electronic poll books are supposed to be a gatekeeper also to make sure that people that are not registered to vote can't vote. But the poll books can be manipulated as well. And they use a different database. Some people would just assume, well, they must be connected to the voter registration database. Well, they're not. They have a different database. So someone at some point takes information from the voter registration database and then they feed the voter validation database, the poll book database. In Dallas, Texas, some citizens there were running the poll books, election judges, and they didn't quite trust the computers, so they were keeping paper notebook next to the computer, the poll books. And so when Joe would come in, they'd write Joe's name down in the paper, and then they'd check Joe in on the electronic poll book. And they enjoyed knowing that if they had 8 names written down here on the paper, that the poll book said there were 8 check-ins, right? So they're keeping things reconciled here. About 45 minutes before the polls close, all of a sudden, the check-in numbers on the poll book started going up by themselves, as if they were checking people in, but they weren't checking anyone in. The numbers just started increasing. And so she's looking at it and says, oh my gosh, my numbers are going up by themselves. And she tells the person next to her, that person looks over and says, oh my gosh, your numbers are going up by themselves. And then she looks at her own, and the numbers are going up on that one too. All the poll books, the numbers were going up by themselves. And they weren't checking anyone in. Well, at the end of all that, at the end of the day, there were an extra over 2,000 entries that someone injected into the poll books. It's ridiculous. They unplugged the machines. They kept going up. They didn't stop because they had batteries in them. They're actually Microsoft Surface tablets running Microsoft
even
Windows.
They're able to manipulate in-person voting.
Yeah, that's what's really frustrating because especially with this audience, people come to us, what can I do? What's the right thing to do? And we say, go vote in person. That's the first thing we say.
But you do need to vote in person because it's still better than voting by mail.
Yes.
In person on election day only, period. And I'll explain why that's so important as we go on here. So the poll books are manipulatable. Now you may ask, why would someone inject entries into the poll book? Well, it's pretty simple. At the end of the day, they're supposed to look at the total number of ballots that came through the tabulators because the tabulators keep track of how many ballots. And let's say at the end of the day, there's 1,000 there. They should have 1,000 check-ins. Also, if you have 1,000 ballots, you have 1,000 check-ins. But if you inject an extra 500 check-ins in there, most likely what they've done is they've already injected an extra 500 ballots, and they're injecting the check-ins so when they compare those numbers, they're the same.